Hello and welcome to the 5-Minute Call. This is a podcast where we take a deep dive into the stories of the people that make theatre happen.
We are your hosts. I'm Claire Underwood and this is...
I'm Oren. Throughout this series, we're going to be interviewing a lot of really interesting people and telling some stories in the hopes that it provides some value and some context and some understanding and insight into this industry. But I don't think we can do that until we actually say who we are and what we do and why we have not the authority, why we have
the audacity
to be
come
doing
in here
this.
and talk to these amazing people. Yeah.
So, who are you?
Who am I? Okay, I am Claire Underwood. I'm a vocal coach. I work in the West End and in film and in TV. I've been doing that for nearly 20 years now. Prior to that, I was a singer. I did a lot of session singing, cabaret singing, where the voice is really used as an instrument. And I've got stuck now. And what? There was no and.
It's really hard. It's hard to think about. It's so hard, isn't it?
About
especially on the spot.
Yeah.
Which is why I applaud the guests for being able to come here fresh and just speak about their lives.
Yeah.
Because it's difficult.
It's hard. It's not an easy thing to do. Suddenly you become deeply self-conscious.
You do indeed.
Yeah. So who are you, Oren?
I am a singing teacher, business owner, entrepreneur. I've won various awards in business or singing, or teaching singing, and more recently now entered for an award in the AI domain because I built an AI for singers and for singing teachers. And I do a lot of voice research and a lot of work on a very niche area of the voice called strophanation, semi-related vocal tract SOVT stuff for those that are listening and don't know what it is but fancy looking it up. It is very interesting and I highly recommend you do.
How did we meet, Oren?
We met through a very lovely individual, Bradley Jaden. So he was playing Javert in Les Mis, and I'd sent the cast just an array of products that we had, sort of vocal health products, and he was the recipient of one of them, and he had said that he thinks that you would be very interested in getting to know more about it and getting to just having a chat, and he put us in contact. And I think literally from day one of meeting, we'd already put in the works some kind of workshop that we were going to do with the cast. And then it kind of spiraled into we just have regular nerd outs.
I got fascinated by the straw work. It was something I'd done a little bit of with my students pre-COVID, but never to the extent that I now do from hearing you talk about it and understanding what it can do. And my God, it's made all the difference in the world to so many people in the West End, just keeping their voices fresh and exploring new techniques, finding the baseline of effort that they can use, which obviously as a vocal coach is the kind of stuff that I'm really looking for, anything that can help me get there. So, obviously I was immediately fascinated, but I think the best thing is that we can sort of have a vocal geek out together, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. That's the most fun. There are times that we have, agreed to meet up. And okay, great. We've got a session and an agenda for that session. And it's one of two things. Either everything we'd planned just goes out the window because we've thought about something else and we've just got a new set of topics, or we fixate on one particular topic and just end up speaking about that for hours and hours and hours. And it's so delightful. I love it. It's some of the most fun you can have. Singing teaching especially is quite lonely. Very lonely, because everybody wants to be in their own little bubble, and I don't want to share knowledge. I don't want to share anything because you're going to poach my students or take whatever I don't care. It's sharing and helping each other grow and develop and learning new things. I think is really fun. And I
think honestly that feeling comes from the same place that many performers that I work with have, which is this: somebody else is going to find out I can't do it. It seems to be working when I'm on my own in a room with people. Let's not disillusion them that there's some magic trick that I do when I'm teaching, And I think that's a shame, because each vocal coach, we might all start off with the same fundamental knowledge, but each vocal coach applies it in such a different way, and we could really learn from one another, as you and I do when we sit down and just chat stuff through, and that is a magic thing.
I completely agree. I think for the most part, especially just between us, just having a chat and just exploring, even if it's theoretical, just creating this scenario and then thinking about, what does happen if you're, I don't know, up a mountain at altitude and you try and sing, and just, just these random situations. You're just figuring out what would happen to them. I think it's just so fun.
We're doing that hiking thing next year, are we? Where we go up?
Oh yeah,
the mountain
absolutely, good. Yeah, and a couple of years time, we've also got a trip to Mars planned to see what would happen.
Only a couple of years.
This podcast as a format is really fun. These are unique stories that we're exploring, and in understanding how those people approach this industry and approach their jobs, even through childhood or preparation, or how they go about auditions, or actually how they go about getting on stage and performing. Everybody is unique. There is no one right way to do it.
Yes.
And I think that's really special. And I think it's just so interesting seeing and putting a highlight on, we're all different. Everybody's different. Everybody's going to have a different approach. Everybody's going to have a unique story. And just the more stories you tell, just the more data you have to start bringing in your own understanding of how you want to approach this industry, from the perspective of, let's say, the listener in this instance versus us as teachers. But even still, it works both ways.
It's my endless fascination. There's a great line in Ted Lasso where Rebecca, played by Hannah Waddingham, her mother comes in to the football club and she is introduced to Ted. And I can't remember the exact line, but Ted says he loves meeting people's parents because it's like reading the manual for how they ended up. That's not the exact quote. But I find that with people's stories about how they've come. I always ask people when I first meet them in a lesson situation tell me about your relationship with your voice. Like, how did this come? Because that tells me so much about how you approach singing and how you're feeling about your singing right now and what it's informed by. The route you took in shaped you and gave you the skills that you have and made you unique. And that's what I want to know when I'm working with a singer, or indeed an MD or a choreographer or anybody else. I want to know what puts you here in this moment. I want to see the manual. Yeah. So that's my fascination with hearing people's stories.
It's the psychology of it, isn't it? Yeah. It's at least in the first instance, completely remove any idea of technique or anatomy or that kind of stuff, and it's just, who are you? Where have you come from? What have you done? What do you know? And what does that mean to you? Which is so crucial, because everybody is going to have a different word for different things, and every aspect of vocal pedagogy, for some reason, has about 20 different labels. But it's just that getting that understanding, I think, is so important. So your approach then is just understanding the person before you then go and approach actually trying to work on the voice?
At least getting a window on the person before. And there are other things that conversation does in the situation. Often people are very nervous when they're meeting a new vocal coach for the first time, so allowing them to have a little bit of time, just human to human, before they bring you this precious thing that is their voice, is really great. I'm also kind of doing quite a lot of background analysis on how the voice is working whilst they're talking, but crucially, I think it often puts us on the same level, because there's often a point of contact and a point of similarity that we can share right from the beginning. And that makes my job much easier and tells me a lot about which side of myself I need to bring to this person to help them understand what's happening. I think teaching is about being a chameleon.
Just about to say, yeah.
I'm me from the inside, but the way I present it has to suit the person who walks into the room. My energy has to suit them. My language has to suit them. And if I replicate it one person to the other, it just won't work. So that conversation at the beginning gives me a lot of information about those things. There's a lot of processing happening. And that's not a magic thing in me. That's a very human thing. Yeah. That's what we're doing when we have a conversation. We are processing language and body language. And
I think the amazing thing is picking out the expert parts of that you need to then go and do the job. And it's having that experience, but the knowledge of the in-depth knowledge of the voice, so that you can have like these subroutines. Just it's not really even conscious sometimes.
No.
It's just processing in the background as you're engaging with people.
Yeah.
It's hard to turn off though, I find.
Oh, impossible.
Yeah.
Impossible.
Like I could just be on the train or something, I'm overhearing somebody, and it's just, and I'm like, I just don't care.
Yeah.
I just want to be nice and chilled out on this train, and it's like somebody's maybe got just a little bit more twang, or like, and my brain is just.
I'm going to give you one word, Oren. Headphones.
Oh, what a beautiful invention.
Headphones, often with nothing running in them, just like taking the sounds out of the world as I go home is, crucial. Otherwise I come home like ragged.
Overload.
Completely overloaded. We started this by saying that we delve into the stories of the people who make theatre happen.
Yes.
So what's your story?
The full
Tell
thing?
us,
What do you want to know?
I would love to know. Here you go. Like we're in a lesson. Tell me about you and your voice.
I have had a interesting journey with my voice from childhood. And this is, I guess, secondhand knowledge because I don't remember, but this is from my mother. Apparently, I was non-verbal until I think I was about 4 or 5 years old, something like that. She wouldn't talk to anybody. And across my life, there is potentially elements of neurodiversity. But yeah, I was just non-verbal. And so it took me a really long time to even speak, let alone sing. All throughout school and high school, I was the quietest person. I just kept to myself, didn't care about anybody, didn't want to engage with anybody. I just wanted to be alone to myself, just get on with my shit.
So you're very comfortable with that?
Oh, yeah. I adore my own company. And it sounds really like cringy to say. I genuinely love just being alone in a room with myself, even just doing nothing. You know, it's just, I just find a nice peace to it, especially with, the world is bonkers and there is so much stimulus all the time. In fact, this is why I said it earlier. When we first got into this room, it was so quiet, and just coming out of London and coming in here, I was like, this feels good. So I love it.
Have you ever tried those flow tank things? Is that what it's called?
I know what you mean. I really want to try one.
I'm really curious for that very reason, but I also think I might be terrified.
I think I would love it. So it's the one where you're floating on water, right? And you're in this sensory float tank. Yeah.
I got that wrong.
Yeah. And you're in this sensory bubble.
Yeah.
Oh, I really want to try it. I really want to try it.
Maybe we should go try it one day.
Let's do it.
Okay, so he's silent and he likes being on his own so far. Where does his voice come in?
So this is a really interesting thing. I don't know if I've said this to you before, but I remember at one point during high school being in the library, and a group of friends, acquaintances, people that I knew just because they were neighbours, they were having a conversation. They were talking about this after school theatre school that they were going to go and try, just for like drama classes, improv classes, just for a bit of fun. And I don't know what sparked the decision in my brain, but something clicked and I just went up to them and I was like, I'll do that. I don't know why. I don't know what the inspiration for that thought was. It just happened. It was completely spontaneous.
When you look back on that, does that feel like you?
Oh, it was so weird. It was alien. It was like a complete new inhabitant of this vessel. for some momentary reason had just gone, and just as an outburst, I'll do that. And it was literally, I'll do that. I remember the words so distinctly. And we knew each other. We're neighbours. Our parents knew each other. I hadn't really engaged with them at all. And then it was. I went to this drama school at first 1 day a week for a few months, and then 2 days a week for a few months. And then after a few years, I was there pretty much every single day. So finished school, 4:00. Get home. I was there by 5:30. Didn't finish until 8. And I was, most of the time it was drama and acting and improv. I freaking love improv. And this is so weird because it is so far removed from who I used to be as a child, where I would never get up in front of anybody or do anything, certainly not family. And after just having these classes, I just adored just getting up and just making random stories up as kind of this improv thing. Still wouldn't do it in front of family, but I would happily get on a stage and just have a bit of fun. And I think that really made me grow in confidence and just in figuring out myself and my voice and like who I am. And then one day, because I am a big, tall person, they were working on a show and they were like, we need you to do this role in the show. I can't remember what show it was or what role it was. But it was obviously the male lead, who is the big male lead. And they were like, you're the only one that can do it. And for comparison, the friends that I had there, like now I'm like 6'3". At the time I was probably like 6 foot. I mean, I was tall. All of my friends were half my size at most. It was always, you just get these, you have to do these roles. And the caveat for that is they include singing. Unavoidable. I remember outright, I don't sing. Not a chance of my singing. Anyway, I took lessons privately with the teacher that was there just to get a bit of confidence, and I actually discovered that I quite enjoy singing. And from there, it then spiraled into, as I'm older, I'm at college, I'm at university, I'm also taking night classes at Central. I'm also doing classes. I did a couple of months in Holland doing some cross-border stuff with LCM, London College of Music. So they had a sort of an exchange program type thing in Holland. And everything I then sort of did was just getting to know my voice and how it works, and then understanding how to apply that to teaching. And as that went further down the rabbit hole, I actually really enjoy the teaching side and understanding the voice. And yeah, just diving into the science of it from there, which is sort of how I came about to where I am now, is sort of science led. I'm
going to ask you an imponderable question, but I'm really interested to know your thoughts on it. That feels like that moment in the library where you said, I can do that. That feels like a sliding doors moment. Yeah. Do you have any notion of what you might have done if you had not taken that route?
So these are like fixed points in time, right? They're distinctive enough events that if they didn't happen, your entire life would be completely different. You can get away with the small things, like you take a different route on the way to work or whatever. Yeah. But this is like, if this changes, everything changes. Genuinely, I could not possibly tell you what I would be. It certainly would not be this. I wouldn't be in the performing arts. I wouldn't be engaged in the arts. I don't even know, because I actually went to university and studied psychology, neuropsychology and music. And as well as that, as like an aside, I was doing engineering. But that only came about because I had done work in the arts and because I was interested in the science side of the voice. And then my mum was like, oh, you should do a fallback degree. You have to do a fallback degree. And so my fallback was psychology, but then I wanted to bring some music into it. So it translated into neuropsychology and music. So all of that would not have happened if it wasn't for that first initial inspired thought. And I don't know how heavy this is. I wonder if I would either not be alive or... Yeah, I think that. And I think...
From a mental health perspective?
A combination of, during this period of university, I had some major health issues and I had 2 life-saving operations. And the only thing that brought me back out the other end, and it took years, was the joy of the arts and working on little engineering projects and just creative, like being creative and doing things which then ultimately formed into the business that I have now. And the only reason why those things happened was because at that point in my life, I was so invested and interested in the arts. And I don't know if I didn't have that, maybe I would have had something else. It's impossible to know. But I feel like if I didn't have that, I don't think I would have been able to bring myself to recover from those operations. If that sort of makes sense.
It does entirely, and I'm sure it will resonate with a lot of people.
And it's
the arts have saved many people.
It's unreal. It's so hard to think about the ifs and the ors, and if it could have been different, how different would it have been? I don't know. Maybe I would have ended up in exactly the same place. Who knows? I feel like it would have been completely different. Just my connection to this industry has, in every aspect of my life, had so many points of, we're going through this, but it boosts it back up, and we're going through this low time and it boosts it back up. So,
I feel like in turn you spread that. You then in turn are now helping people.
Yeah, I know what it feels like, I think, to be beyond the bottom. And to know that, like, it could be a 50-50 either way if you live. And I really am passionate about getting people invested in this industry and enjoying this industry in any capacity. Even if it's just take a trip to the theatre. It's fun. Yeah. It's fun just to go and just immerse yourself in this world for 2.5 hours. You don't have to think about anything else. You just get to enjoy this experience. And I think even if it's just that, that's great in itself. You'll leave feeling uplifted. I mean, depends on what you're seeing. Some of it's pretty heavy, but you'll feel. I truly believe that if you just give it a go, you'll enjoy it. Both sides of that, if it's from the audience perspective or just having a bit of a sing-song every now and then. Yeah. I mean, there's so much neuropsychology in engaging, particularly with music, but it translates to singing, and especially if you're singing with an orchestra and stuff like that, there's a lot of benefits. But when you engage in music near enough, every region in your brain fires. You just get it. And there was a TED talk, I think they wrote or they spoke about it as a symphony of neurons in your brain. And everything from, if you're playing an instrument, from motor cortices, if you're singing at the same time, 2 different language processing going on. So you're processing language for music, for translating the words into melodic phrasing, and then you're also processing the meaning of the word. Just your whole brain lights up, and I think it's so fantastic. And I think just engaging in some capacity in the ability to make your brain fire like that, people should just give it a whirl.
Let's do a whole podcast on this, because we're in a geek situation again, and I love it.
We are.
I read a thing the other day that was talking about a study that suggests that performers and audiences' brainwaves sync as they're performing. So about halfway through, generally, they start to be in sync.
Yes.
And you just think, from a connection point of view, that is just incredible.
Yeah. I don't know if it was the same one that I had seen. I saw one that was looking at respiratory patterns. And as singers start to work together in harmony, their respiratory patterns start to sync up, which then syncs up their heart rates, and so that everybody just becomes in phase. And when you get that, you get this almost, it's not mystical, it's not necessarily spiritual, but I understand how it can be interpreted as that. But you just get this environment where everybody is connected but not connected, because they're all in phase with each other. And then when you add that onto the cognitive aspect of being in phase, I think it's just amazing. We'll do some
Let's do a
some
podcast
other
on
nerds
this.
on nerd out podcast on this. I think is really interesting. If we go back to talking about stories, we gotta dive into Claire Underwood. What's your process or your thinking or your route to get from that young individual to now working on the West End with some amazing people?
I grew up with musicians all around me. My mum played in shows, played percussion in shows. My godfather, who we lived with for a number of years, played French horn in shows. My stepfather was principal percussionist at the Opera House. I grew up in that world. My granddad was not a professional musician, but he wrote shows and loved music and played the piano and gave me my love of the golden era of songs, American golden era. There was some very high level performance happening all around me. And I was very used to going into theatres. I mean, literally sleeping bag in the dressing room because mum couldn't afford a babysitter. So theatres were in my bones. Also in my blood. My great grandmother was a dancer and singer. So, it's in there.
Yeah.
It's very deep in there. So I had been encouraged to play an instrument. I actually played many, but the main one was the French horn. And I thought I was going to go and be a French horn player. I'm going to be a musician. But I got a brace on my teeth at 16. Couldn't play the horn with the brace on. And fell back in love with singing, which if you'd asked me when I was little what I wanted to do, I wanted to sing. I knew I wanted to sing right back then. Totally the opposite to you.
Right.
Like completely the opposite. So then post 18, I was definitely encouraged to have a university education. So I went off to university. I think the picking of that university was a bit random, down to a happy experience when I went up. As so many moments in my life are, they were defined by a happy shopping experience before the interview. It's like I bought a hat.
So what you're saying is, if we need to get something out of you, we've got to take you shopping first.
Yes, and it has to be successful.
Yes. So we've got to do a successful shopping experience.
Yeah.
And then whatever comes after that is...
It's all good.
Great.
It's all good.
That is good to know.
I mean, literally, I can actually mark out certain moments in my life by a good shopping experience just right before it. It's just silly. Never seen my life in that perspective before, but it's true. So, university, I wanted to go and do a postgrad in singing. I did go and do a postgrad in singing, although I would caveat that with I already had considerable discomfort in the classical world. When I was singing, I was doing a lot of classical music at university, but I was also doing cabaret and things. And that connected me to my family, this long line of, shows. And I think that was just very powerful. But I wasn't a theatre girl. I wasn't involved in the productions at university. I hadn't been through my childhood. So I was a bit of a fish out of water, but I was also a bit of a fish out of water in the classical field as well, because I had one foot in musical theatre and cabaret. So I think there was a little bit of not quite belonging to anything. And when you put that in with a natural inclination to not necessarily trust myself or my instincts, I think I didn't push myself forward. I went and did a postgrad, but didn't stay on that postgrad year because, well, that's a whole other story. But the fundamental thing is I couldn't look in a mirror. I was encouraged a lot, as we do, to look in a mirror and see what my face was doing and things. I couldn't watch myself singing classical recital repertoire. It would make me cry. I would look at myself, and I used to have this real out-of-body experience where I saw this woman singing and I couldn't make that me. There was a voice coming out and I could see her, but she wasn't me. And that kind of disassociation was happening more and more and more. And so I left that. Then we can kind of fast forward a little bit. I did a performance course run by ENO called the NAC. And that, there's a specific moment during that year that is a kind of sliding doors moment in a way, in that there was a moment where I realised that being right about the music was not as important as being part of the ensemble of the music. I'd had very rigorous musical training. I knew what rhythms were. I knew what pitches were. That had never been in question for me because of my instrumental training.
Yeah.
And I mean, we were doing a piece and everybody kept getting this rhythm wrong. It was driving me crackers. And then Mary King, who ran that course, pointed out to me that there were 25 performers in the room and that 24 of them were doing it wrong and one was doing it right. And at that point, maybe the one needed to match the 24 rather than the other way around. And she was absolutely right. And that was a musical turning point. I also, from that, started teaching singing in schools as a peripatetic teacher. And then my very good university friend had started working at Cameron Mackintosh. And there was a request for names to be put forward for a coach for somebody on one of the tours. And Steve said to me, I'd like to put your name forward. And I said, no. Don't be ridiculous. I have not done this kind of performing on stage. I understand musical theatre like in here, but I haven't done it. No, it's a ridiculous notion. So off he went. And then his partner and my partner sort of performed a pincer movement on me over the course of about 3 months until I was just so fed up of them. I went, fine. Okay, I'll do it, but everybody's then going to know that it's a disaster and we can just move on. Okay, so the gorgeous Lisa O'Hare arrived for a session and it was without question the most fun I've ever had. It was just like, I loved my teaching in schools. I loved working with kids, but this was like another level.
Something different, isn't it?
It's somebody who's so committed to what they're doing, somebody who brings their skills and their passion to it, and has developed, their own picture, their own lens on it, and can share that with you. It was just magic, and I was hooked. And then I was very quickly pregnant with my first child, and that sort of that's another little sliding doorsy kind of moment. Obviously Steve getting me to teach was one, and another one where it was like, well, I'm going on maternity leave, maybe now's the moment I could just let that other work fall away and we'll see what happens here. And I literally taught in my mother's front room whilst she looked after our daughter in the other room. So anybody who knows me right back from the beginning days also knows my now very grown-up girl as a baby, because they all had to say hello to her on the way. She was very definitely a showbiz baby. Yeah, that's how we get to musical theatre. And from musical theatre to film and TV and all sorts of things. And now I sit here,
slots in place,
seriously the luckiest girl in the world, working on shows that I adore and still pinch myself when I'm in the room thinking, how has this happened?
I think it's wonderful. It's such an amazing journey. And a thought just came to my mind then, and I think it's actually quite interesting to know. Let's take the example of Les Mis, because we spoke about it earlier, but I can go to that show a million times because I'm going as an audience member, going to enjoy the show. Maybe it's a new cast or working with new people. You have to go to those shows and keep going to those shows. Does that change the enjoyment of it for you?
It changes it, but it doesn't lessen it.
Okay.
I mean, I have properly lost count of how many times I've seen Les Mis, but it's never, because performance is live, because everything I love about voices is live there in front of me. And I'm watching performers that I have worked with in a room implementing some of the stuff we worked on. So there's a little kind of moment of, we did that together, But there's also, that's different. he hasn't shown me that when we've been in the room together. Like, we need to incorporate that next time. So there's a lot of learning going on, and it's a damn good show. It's a great story every single time. And all of these ones that I'm working on are. Yeah. So I'm still... I think I'm fundamentally gullible enough that actually I can just go, oh, look, shiny new show. I can watch it again and again. I love the stories.
So the impact of the story is always the same for you. It doesn't change. Is that because the performers are doing different things?
Absolutely.
That's so cool.
Absolutely. And I'll see new things in each new person that takes on the role, and I adore that. I adore watching a character who I have known and loved and come to know deeper and deeper and deeper, then show me something again that I hadn't thought of.
Oh, so that's really interesting as well, isn't it? Because then you're taking the characters and translating them across multiple people as well.
Yes.
So are you experiencing a different journey of the character themselves versus what audience sees?
Yes, I think I probably am, because I think I bring a history with me. But there will also be, especially with a show like Les Mis, there will be audience members who have seen every cast ever, who could probably sit and have this conversation with me as well. I love watching the characters being reinvented in each craft that they sail in, and it's really important to me when I'm working with somebody that I'm not imposing the previous person's Javert on the new Javert. It has to be his Javert. Yeah. My job is in service to his performance. It's not in creating it. For as much as I work very closely with creative teams and they have things in their minds that they really want to bring out, I can help to do that. But I always maintain that I am in service to the performer. Yeah. That's my primary concern.
It's partitioning all the different versions, and each time there's a new version, it's keeping that partition separate so that instance can be as unique as it needs to be.
Yes, whilst also serving the needs of the vehicle as a whole, and frankly the machine as a whole, because these big shows are machines, and they are machines that need to continue to run and be consistent. Maybe it's an unfair analogy, but I don't know. Why am I going for a car metaphor here? I know nothing about cars.
You started down the track of machine. You got to go with it.
That's where it came from. Machine. Name me a vehicle model, like a Ford
Fiesta.
That'll do. It's a terrible choice, but that'll do. A Ford Fiesta still has to look like a Ford Fiesta. Whatever they do to improve the engine inside, it still has to look like a Ford Fiesta. So, and whoever is, I'll just stretch that metaphor a little further now, whoever is driving it, it's still got to behave and function like a Ford Fiesta, right? So we have that in terms of these big machine shows. We still have got to preserve the character and the reputation of the show and the story that was originally trying to be told. But I'm also very passionate that we have to honour the performers who are carrying that, because frankly I have watched when performers are being squeezed into a performance that isn't theirs, and it's heartbreaking, and the mental health effects of that on the performer are really serious, and nobody should underestimate them. Yeah. So
I agree.
Yeah.
It's like me getting into a smart car.
You're not going to get into a smart car?
Those things are tiny.
Yeah.
Just to add a little light note to your... No, but I do agree. Yeah. I do agree. Forcing something into a space that it doesn't fit in, it does put an unnecessary toll on the person that's being squeezed.
Because their self-esteem is chipped away at. For a whole year they're in this contract, right? And all year they're being called in for extra rehearsal and working on this and working on that. It's very difficult to maintain your core self-esteem in the midst of that. You can you can, and you absolutely, that's what I try and do with people, is say, no, this is about creating a character that sits in this story through you in the way that the company needs you to do it. But yeah, it's very easy for that to chip away at somebody's self-esteem, make them think they can't do it, they can't sing, they're not the performer they thought they were. It's not fair.
It's a big role that you've got. I admire it. I do admire it. You've got I think there's more to it than actually. I mean, you've said a lot, but there is the element of part therapist, part coach, part mentor, part life advisor. But I mean, there's so many everything. Components to this role. So it's because people impressive. Can't sing.
It's here. It's not, and I'm not for a second, by what I'm about to say, suggesting that instrumentalists are not giving their all and speaking through their instrument. But there is a fundamental difference between holding a violin or a French horn and using something that is fundamentally part of your anatomy to express yourself. It's very, very difficult to divide the two when something is going wrong there. So it's a huge part of
I completely agree.
The job is taking care of the person.
Yeah.
We started off this episode, I don't think we mind saying, somewhat uncomfortable about how we were going to do it. And look at it, as soon as we're talking about one another's stories, we're lit up. And I think that's a human thing, and that's really what we want to do on this podcast, is tell people stories.
Absolutely, yeah. I think it's a really nice way of putting it. I'm not going to do it a disservice by butchering that, so I'm just going to say that I agree. Genuinely, I do agree. And it's I'm excited. I'm excited for where this can go. I'm excited for the people that we have lined up to talk to, and for everybody that's watching or listening. I think you will also be very excited for some of the people that we have on here. And so on that note, like, comment, subscribe. Just gotta drop that little nugget in there. No, amazing. That was fun. That was cool.
Thank you very much. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you.
It's really special.
Thank you. I love this so much.
Me too. Thank you so much for watching our episode today. If you enjoyed it, please subscribe so that you won't miss an episode in the future.
If you currently are or have been affected by any of the topics discussed in this episode, please see the show notes below for some helpful resources.